We have Todd Toback on the call again this week. And Todd, I appreciate your time as always. Maybe we can make this a regular appearance.
Well, let's go. Let's start with today and rock and roll, baby.
So we're going to build on the last episode we did together. We talked about acquisition. Now we're going to be talking about disposition and how when somebody gets a property under contract, what do they do with it? But before we do, I have to push everybody to your show, because if they haven't been subscribing to your show by now, I don't know what they're waiting for. No Limits podcast with Todd Toback. You got to make sure you find his show and subscribe to it. Where else can they hit you up these days?
Well, sure. The No Limits Real Estate Investing Podcast is the podcast. And if they want to go to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com, they can go there and listen to the podcast or download what we call the MAP. That's the Massive Action Plan. So they're more than welcome to go there and learn more about what we offer. But the podcast is a great place to start, and then going to the website secondary.
Yeah, there's a lot of great content there, people. So make sure you take a listen to that. So like I said, we're going to build on our last episode together. And I really want to talk about disposition. And you do things very differently than I've heard a lot of other people trying to do disposition with the properties they get under contract. So let's start things off at the very beginning. What is one of the first things that they need to do before they even think about selling that contract?
Well, great question, JD. I think they have to do something called a checkup from the neck up. And so, many people look, they get into this business and you're so excited to get that deal, right? But what happens is sometimes we develop this urgency that we need to sell this property as fast as humanly possible, right? And so what I think is really important is understand that when you have a good property under contract, that's an asset, right? And haste makes waste, in that you want to move with a sense of urgency, but you also want to be strategic on how you either keep this thing and hold it as a rental, either how you will maybe wholesale it, maybe take it down and clean it out and put it on the multiple listing service, or you may decide to wholesale it for maximum profit. But in either one of those scenarios, any one of those scenarios, right, we want to get maximum profit for this deal. And so you can understand that if you've structured your contract correctly, you should have 30 days, right? There are some deals where we went into contract on Friday and we had to close on a Monday. And I understand there are certain circumstances where that happens, but as a whole, you're going to have at least 30 days. And so understanding that you've got to now say, okay, I've got this deal now. I need to be responsible, and I have a quote unquote fiduciary responsibility to myself and my company to now get the maximum profit, right? And that's going to be really, really, really important. Now, let me say this: if you are brand new in this business, and let's assume that either you have not done deals or maybe you've done a few. A lot of new wholesalers out there, they develop these buddy relationships with their cash buyers, right? And they have this very subservient / superior relationship with their cash buyers, where the cash buyers are like quote unquote big brother and this wholesaler is little brother, right? And that's not always the case, but there's a tendency to be that way, right? I'm the guy coming in with the cash and you're just the deal finder. And so that's where that attitude comes from. And so what that relationship is code for is, I'm going to sell this to you lower than I think I should, right? Or I'm going to sell this to you at the expense of getting a higher price. And so I think we have to get our head straight on that, is that a lot of people out there are like, well, I like, to have my relationships, and I like this guy and I like that guy, and I don't want to ruffle the feathers. Well, the reason why they like you, okay, is, and I don't mean this in a rude way, but the reason why they like you is because you are selling them properties below market value, far below where you should. So I don't know if I went too far ahead there, JD.
No, that's exactly where I was hoping you were going to go. And I'm going to be the first one to admit this. We've been in this mindset that when and a lot of real estate investors do this, especially when they get into wholesaling, is that we do have our favorites. We establish those relationships, And sometimes before we let it go out to the rest of the buyers list, we might even give a couple of them a quick heads up, like first refusal kind of a thing.
Yep.
And I can definitely see how that's going to shoot you in the foot to a certain extent.
Oh, absolutely. Because what happens is, especially when you start sending them to the same one, right? And especially if you do assignments, they start to see what you make, right? Maybe it's 15, maybe it's 20. And by the way, I hope to God it's more than 20. And then maybe it's 30, right? They start to get, they may say they don't get upset underneath, right? But believe you me, they notice, right?
Mhm.
And there's just a little mental note. And so they know on the next property, okay, I have a room to negotiate here or say this or say that. And so you got to let the market take it where it's at. So true story. So a while back, I taught a course called Bigger Deals. And I noticed, by the way, through my private clients that I take on occasionally, and the difference between people who struggle and the ones that really are crushing it, the ones who crush it are doing bigger deals. Period. Right?
Mm.
They're not doing the ones who are crushing are not doing little $7,000 deals here, $10,000 here at the 12s. You'll see them do 25, 25, 32, 18, 86, 72, 54. You'll see those kinds of deals. And I noticed that and I said, I've got to teach this course called Bigger Deals. So I took a group of 35 people and I said, I'm going to double your deal size. Okay, this is the goal of this 8-week challenge here. I'm going to double your deal size. We're going to start with this mindset. And it's important to negotiate right on the front end. We talked about that in the first episode. But the back end, man, you guys are just leaving so much money on the table. I said, but one of the things that's going to be a requirement for you to go in this course is that you're going to have to get uncomfortable, right? The relationships that you have with your cash buyers are going to change, right? And you're going to have to learn it's okay not to be liked, but you have to be respected.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's how, I knew it in my own business. And then I started to see it, obviously, the impact in others. So long story short, 6 weeks in, everyone who participated in this course immediately doubled their deal size. It was completely insane. It was more drastic than I could even fathom. But if you want, we can go over a little bit of this process of how we sell these deals. Of course, we've done a lot of teasing here. I'm not really sure we're going to share all of it today, JD.
Well, they got to go to your show and hit you up on your site to get every piece of this. But
so let's talk about dispositions, right? So there's a couple ways you can go about that. But number one, what you have to do, especially in this market, is you've got to create competition, right? Competition will tell you where the true market value of the property is. This is very, very, very important. I can tell you that different buyers pay more for certain areas. Different buyers pay more depending what their exit strategy is. So a guy who's going to buy and hold it is definitely going to pay more than a guy who's going to fix and flip it, right? A guy who's going to move into it with the single dad who moves into the house with his 22-year-old son who's going to fix it himself, right? And just pay for the materials is going to pay more than the big company who's got a big crew who's going to have to fix and flip it, right? So we need to create competition to drive up that price. So my first recommendation to everybody is you have to have control of the process, to have a big buyers list. And I'm going to talk about a way that you can avoid this in a minute, but let's assume that you have to develop a big buyers list through a multiple of ways, right? You can do direct mail. You can work with other wholesalers. You can work with real estate agents, but one of my favorite ways is direct mail. And you want to have a large group of buyers who you're dealing with, and every single property that you have, you want to send out to all of them and do one inspection time. Okay. You want to set this, you want to keep a tight leash, tell them they have to be there exactly at this time, that this is the quote unquote suggested starting bid. You want to start with that framework, right? Suggested starting bid. This is not the price. Tell them this is the deadline for the offers. It's going to be $5,000 non-refundable EMD. They have to close in 7 to 10 days, cash or hard money only. And so you're setting the tone and you're driving the process. Okay. I also get a professional inspector out to all of my wholesale deals. And it's a way to quell the concerns of buyers, right, with the inspection, but also it will protect me if I need to get a reduction later.
Mhm.
So we get everybody there. And if you do your job right, you should price it approximately $10,000 less than what you think the property will go for. Now, of course, this is going to take some nerve. Everyone's like, why would I price it less than I think I could get it for? Right? Because this is going way above asking. Okay. That's the trick here. You're going to drive this way above asking. So you get everybody to the property. You want to do some crowd control. You want to keep them away from the seller and explain, hey, don't talk to the seller. And we have this all in the email that we send out. And you do a quick 45-minute inspection. Okay. Offers come in, highest and best comes in. Of course, it's going to be your title company. You drive the process. Now, here's what's going to happen is, by the way, JD, do most of the people listening to your show, have the majority of them done 1 or 2 deals, or is it no deals, or is it a bunch of deals?
It's all over the place.
Okay. So if you are brand new, you want to do it this way, and you don't have to worry about repairing any kind of relationships with your buyers or retraining them. You want to train them this way from day one.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've been playing the favorites, here's what's going to happen. Guarantee it. Your old buyers are going to go there and they are going to stomp their feet and they're going to walk off the property and they're going to say, I'm not doing business with you anymore. And I'm going to go market for sellers direct, right? There's a little bit of a threat there, and they walk off, and that's part of the process. Right. And what I would say to that is saying, hey, I totally get it. I appreciate all the business that we've done together, but this is the new process. And, if you want to continue to do business, you're more than welcome to submit it. Right. Now, the reason why that buyer is upset is why, JD?
Because up until now, he's in his mind has been getting some pretty decent deals and the insider track.
Correct. And now the only reason why he's upset is that he's not going to get it 20 or 30K less than he should. Right. Or she, right. So, you're going to see that right now. All the people who were on your buyer's list before will gladly submit a bid. And once you get the highest bid, then at that point, you can now direct them to the title and escrow company, make sure the EMD is in, and then rinse and repeat the process, right? That's going to be very, very, very important. Now, that's one step, and that's one way we dispo properties. The other way now that we've started doing that is we just stick them right on. Now that we have them under contract, we just stick them right on the MLS and do the same exact thing, right? We run our inspections the same exact way, but we use the power of the MLS, and we work with a real estate agent to list our properties and do all the negotiation, and we get way more than we would if I did our house buyers list. But you must use that process I spoke about if you're going to get the highest and best.
So, that latter one is especially interesting. Like, since you have this house under contract, what kind of feedback have you received from the seller if you just turn around and put it on the MLS like that?
It's all about expectations. All about expectations. That's it. That's it. Okay. Once you get through your mind and you train yourself to believe it, and then you set those expectations with the seller, it's easy. It's easy, right? Everyone's going to be here at the same time. It's going to be pandemonium. I'm going to start my marketing. I'm going to put it online, right? I'm going to get a head start on everything that we do, right? And this is why we're able to buy houses so fast, right? The escrow company is going to call you. So everything's going to go in one shot. You're going to see a lot of activity, right? We're going to have this one inspection time. You're going to see a lot of people here. So when that happens and all those people there, it's crazy. But now they've expected it. They understand it. They've grown to now understand that you're a man of your word, because when they go to that inspection, it's going to be pandemonium. And so when you set that stage right, I've had 100% success. I've only had problems where we didn't set that expectation. And most of those are marginal deals.
Yeah. Well, you've really squashed everything that most people would do, whether it's the concept of building that relationship, identifying 1 or 2 of your strong buyers, and you're kind of feeding them deals, which frankly, it starts to feel like you're working for them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Go ahead.
But the other thing too is that a lot of people, and I'm going to put myself in the same boat. We have a tendency of putting some sort of markup on the property and then just kind of saying, here it is. This is what we want. Who wants it? Kind of thing. And there's not a lot of negotiation. It's usually almost more of a first come, first serve at that point.
I totally agree. And I found there was a couple of problems with that. It's interesting because I had a chance to work with Tony Robbins' team, and their sales manager came and he wanted some real estate training. So I trained him on real estate. And then he had a phenomenal sales manager who's like the #1 sales manager in the world. And he came in and we agreed to barter for this. And we did some deals together. And he took a look at our process, right? And he's like, I don't understand, well, because we used to do that first come, first, serve thing. And it was like, whoever got the EMD in first. And it was total chaos, right? It was like, who's going to run to the title company with a 5K? And so it's just not a way to run a business. So no one understood what the selection process was for actually getting the deal versus, okay, highest and best actually gets the property, right? You wanted to set clear rules. And so everyone knows they are on a level playing field, right? And so that's really, really important. And so that's something that we adopted. And after we did that, business was never the same in the wholesaling side.
Right. Huh. So just a reminder, everybody look up a No Limits Real Estate Investing podcast, and definitely check out the website for a lot more content. But you just got my head spinning here right now regarding some of this stuff, because it really does make a huge shift out of you having all of the control from the disposition process versus disposition up until now has been very extremely reactionary.
And that's, how we always run. We wanted to run the business, right? We wanted to get rid of that reactionary side, right? The stress and the hurry and the angst and the chaos, right? And so for us, we have one person who handles disposition, who works with a real estate agent. She understands the process and accepts the offer. And that's it, right? That's it. So, that's the most important thing, is that you've got to decide how you want your business to run, right? The end goal. And that'll help you with a lot of decisions, right? If you decide that you want to run your business this way, then your business is going to run that way. And if not, then if you don't have a specific end goal in mind, I guarantee it's going to be chaos.
Sure. So a lot of people are going to probably think this too, like seems to be like a certain market size that you have to be, or a certain cash buyers list size that you have to have in order for this to really work?
Well, if you list on the MLS, no.
Oh yeah.
Right. But I mean, you want to have at least 20 good cash buyers on your list. So the biggest BS I see is wholesalers out there trading lists. Like, I've never heard a bigger piece of malarkey in my entire life, right? Because most of the people on there are just other wholesalers, right? And people who have never done a deal. And so I can tell you that if you've got a list of 2,000 people on your list, probably only 150 have actually ever done a deal. So I'd rather have 20 good ones, right? That are good and are active. So you can do that by mailing. And, that's my preferred method. Chris Chico back in the day created a phenomenal postcard on getting cash buyers. So I love that. So people are calling, they are, that they have bought because you've bought the list, and they've done that also at the auction. That's another great place to do that. But, right now with a multiple listing service, you don't have to do that. Right now, people are listening to this and they're thinking that the MLS is a good idea, but there's too much tension and friction, and, the seller's gonna, freak out. And I get that. Right. But the question is, how much are you willing to get out of your comfort zone to make more money?
Right.
right? And if the deal is that big, if you've got a monster on your hand and you're making, 100K, I don't suggest putting on the MLS. I suggest taking that sucker down, right? Buying it, taking it down, and then doing what you can to maximize profit at that. It's not worth it, right? So
Mhm.
there's money is so cheap right now, right? To private funds is out there in full effect, right? So you can go and get a private money loan for practically free.
Yeah. So, you've mentioned the MLS a couple times now. I can imagine that you run into some realtors. You'd have to find a realtor to be on your team or become one yourself. But what type of resistance have you seen regarding finding the proper fit for a realtor?
It's all about driving the process, right? So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I'm a realtor, I could do this myself, I just want to let you know that I just threw up on my mouth. Okay. If you want a job, get out of real estate investing and go get a job. Okay. It is much easier and far less stress to go work for somebody else than to do the job yourself in your own business. I mean, the whole thing of like, I'm a realtor, I could list it myself. That is quite possibly the most asinine thing that I've ever heard. Go out there and find a broker. Okay. Not a real estate agent, a broker. Okay. And the reason why they call them a broker is because they're broke. Okay. And, the brokers, what I like about them, and not all brokers, and, I mean that because, they're willing to work for $1,000 to $2,000 a deal, right? They're willing to do that. That is their world, right? If you're a real estate investor, I'm hoping that's not why you got involved in this business. And so whenever you're listening to this and you're thinking, hey, is this the kind of wage I got into this business for? And if it's below that, we'll team up with somebody to do that. So a broker, let's say you're in a market like Florida and you're selling a $150,000 house, you can get a broker to sell a house between 1% and 1.5%. Okay. Now the reason why I like a broker is two reasons. Number one is they don't have to split it with an agent.
Mhm.
Number two is that I want the boss. I want the decision maker. That's really important, right?
Mhm.
The full blown decision maker. And so if they have I don't want them in the middle of my listing saying, hey, I don't want you sticking this on the MLS if you don't own it yet, right? I don't want that. So that I want to deal with the decision maker. So it's a broker. And three, you want someone who's not from one of the big houses like Keller Williams or Coldwell Banker. I don't want them to have too many regulations. I want them to be like a free bird, like Joe Smith broker. And so those are the three things. Now, you will definitely, it's interesting because you can find brokers in the Facebook groups, local Facebook groups, and post something on there. And here's what I love. If you say, hey, looking for a broker to list my deals, willing to pay between 1% and 1.5%, or I would say 1%, right? Must be flexible. You're going to get a ton of hate, an absolute ton of hate. And that's okay. I love it, right? I eat it up. But it just knows that I'm doing something right. And then every single time I've got 40 people who say how much they hate me and how brokers commission is non-negotiable, or how could I dare say that? And then I get 5 or 6 people who message me privately and say, man, I would love to do this for you. I would love to do this for you. And those are the people who we're looking for.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm in a smaller market, so when we did our wholesaling at a decent clip, it was amazing how many people, especially realtors and a couple brokers, reached out saying this isn't legal, this isn't, the naysayers came out of the woodwork, especially in a market that I suppose they weren't used to it.
Sure. What market are you operating in? I'm just curious.
In North Dakota.
Right. So, the interesting thing is that it's infuriating to a real estate agent who has to go sit with a seller and nurture that lead and pay for that lead and then fill out all kinds of paperwork, right? Then put the house on the market, make sure it's clean, make sure the seller cooperates, does the listing back and forth, takes the offer, goes back and forth, has to act as a fiduciary, right? Then send it to escrow, has to make sure the loan sticks together, and then all said and done, that agent makes 3% on $150,000 house, which is $4,500, but now they've got to split it with their broker, which is $2,200, right? And the fact that you're going to make 20 or 30 grand on this is infuriating to them.
Mhm.
Right. And so, hey, I could see why they would be upset. Right.
Mhm.
Right. They don't believe that it's possible, because how could this guy be making 20, 30 grand and I'm making 2,500? Right. They
Sure.
also don't understand it, and they're only looking at it through their worldview.
Right. No, the MLS thing is something especially interesting that, and I frankly, I haven't heard, like I mentioned when we started this program, I haven't run into a lot of wholesalers or trainers or coaches even bring up or even suggest this as an option.
Yeah. I mean, the part of that is that you've got to get past your fear of doing that, right? I'm quote unquote losing the deal. Right.
Yeah.
But if it's that good of a deal, just take that sucker down. Take it down. What I mean by take it down is buy it with cash, right? For me, doing bigger deals, I'm always going to recommend that you want to have cash on hand. You can there's a million ways to get cash. Like I said before, I mean, I would line up a bunch of cash advances on my credit card. I mean, you can get these things for basically 0% for 18 months, and get 200 grand worth of that, or you can get a line of credit on your house, or you can get a private lender who will lend to you at 7 or 8%. But that's also an option for you also. I mean, there's a million ways to get $1 million.
Yeah. You and I talked about this on the last episode too, is that this is really a mindset change, not only for a lot of people. We're some of us have gone through different trainings and it becomes a habit the way we're doing things. And
Mm-hmm.
if you really want to see this level of growth that Todd is talking about, it does take this drastic mindset and process change that Todd is suggesting here today.
So I don't take on private clients often. Okay. I don't do it. You've got to be doing deals, and you've got to be willing to change. But one of my proudest moments is a private client. I had him do something that was completely out of his comfort zone. And he told me that he threw up right before he did it. And I was just so happy. And he told me it was one of the best things he's ever done in his life. So I know that if that is happening, right, real growth is happening, right? That the mind has to, if you're going to be stretched, right, it's never comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you go to a new level of growth, it's something that you're not used to doing. And so, before I bought my first commercial property, I was extremely uncomfortable with it. Before I started understanding profit and loss statements, I just couldn't stand looking at spreadsheets. Now, I love it. I live in them. Right. And so before, I was uncomfortable doing kind of an auction format with all my properties. Right. I used to have the one or two favorites, and it was easy. Right. But easy is the killer of growth.
Right. Well, you mentioned, talking to the, you know, I guess trading services with the Tony Robbins fella, but is that what spurred this thought or this change in your business, or how did it come about?
Well, it was interesting because it didn't start out that way, right? But it was a pair of fresh eyes, right? So, we had heard that they were really good at running remote sales teams, right? And then they had heard that we were really good in real estate, and they were local, right,
Mm-hmm.
at the time. And so, a phone call happened, and then the teams got on the phone, and then we had different people looking at different parts of the business, and then that just came up. Right. And so it took a pair of fresh eyes to be like, what the heck are you doing over here? I'm like, that's a really good point. So really it came out of, we were looking at salespeople, and they were like, hey, listen, the selling the properties is not really a sales position. Like, some people have a full blown disposition manager. And, and I'm like, why? Like, why does someone have a disposition manager? There's not really a negotiation going on. There's just a feeding frenzy and the highest and best, and a procedure for where they submit the offer. And so you want to create the frenzy there,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you shouldn't have to be individually calling all of these buyers. And I know some people have, that kind of business, especially like in turnkey real estate, if you have like a turnkey provider, but it's a different client, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're selling fixers, the auction method works really, really well.
Sure. I hate to back up too far, but early on, you were talking about how when we're spending all this time with individuals and we build those relationships and you're kind of giving them the inside track, they might start regretting the concept of what that slice you're making. Do you find that that's pretty much negated when you're in this auction type scenario? Like, because when you're doing an assignment of contract, they do know what you're making on each deal, right?
Well, the biggest thing is I never negotiate on assignment fees. I negotiate on price,
Right.
right? So you never want to make that a point of conversation, right? So someone says, how much are you making on it? Well, first of all, I put somebody in between me and them, and we say, hey, we negotiate on price, right? So submit your total price in here, what you're willing to pay for the property. And, yes, we have this under contract, but that is irrelevant.
Right. Okay.
Right. And so when we send it over, it's a purchase agreement. And if we decide to switch that over to an assignment, sometimes they'll eventually, find out maybe. But we always move the conversation from assignment fee over to price.
Right. Well, I as always, very enlightening. Outside of what we talked about, is there anything else we might have missed that we probably should bring up yet?
My goal for you, if you're listening to this, is this business can change your life, right? And there are small tweaks, just like in any business, that if you take them, will send you to the next level, right? And so my goal for you is to do that. Get out of your comfort zone, right? I know we mentioned the podcast, but the podcast specifically is I try to do something a little bit differently, right? I'm kind of known as a renegade in this business, and I'd like you to be a renegade too if you're listening to this. So that is my advice for today. Hopefully you can take some of that and make some more money for yourself if you're listening to this.
Well, thanks again, Todd. And always welcome back. Hope we can chat again. And this is very insightful. I appreciate it.
Thanks, JD.